Hey, thank you so much for 7,000 subscribers here on YouTube. I really appreciate your support. It's so great to hear that the channel is useful to you and that you're enjoying it. And this video, I'm going to make something special in order to hopefully be able to really help you along on your journey, giving you my 3 tips that I would recommend for beginner, intermediate, and advanced producers. So at the end of this video, no matter in which of these stages you are in your music production journey, you're gonna walk away with 1 or 2 new nuggets, I think, that are gonna help you get to the next level in your production. So starting out with the things I would recommend for a beginner producer, the first thing I would say to you is don't despair. You're gonna get there. You're gonna get to a place where your productions are gonna sound good, where it's gonna become effortless, and where the whole process isn't gonna bog you down so much anymore, and where you feel like you may still have a million things to learn. So hang in there and don't have the feeling of overwhelm or like, I have to give up, I'm not good enough, I'm not cut out for this, and just hold on to the passion that drove you into music production. I think that's a very important thing, and know that you are going to get there. So the first tip I can give you to make this whole process much easier and smooth and will lead to your achieving much better results faster is to templatize your workflow. And that doesn't mean you have to get hours, whatever it is that you use for that. I mean, there's dozens of companies, I think, out there doing templates and stuff. But what I mean with this is that once you achieve a solid mix with your kick and your low and your snare also sounded good against it, make sure you take note of how you had that set up. Maybe resample each of those channels and drop them into a drum rack or into a sampler, and make sure that you can always get back to that without having to start a project from scratch, because there's nothing worse than learning how to do something, getting to a state where actually you're like, hey, this was actually really good, but then the next turn around, you start again from a blank project, and then maybe you have 10 tracks that don't sound as good. So think about what are the things that you always do. Try to find systems to make those repetitive steps smaller, and in many cases that means when you have a great sound, just sample it and just use it from there on onward as a sample. It'll save you so much time, and knowing where you are in your production, in the levels, in the frequency distribution, in the sequencing layout makes a huge difference for how much more enjoyable the process will become and how much quicker you're going to be able to get to good results. So build on things that you can repeat and don't start from scratch all the time. It's a huge waste of time. I've spent years on that. Believe me, you don't want to go there. And the second thing I would recommend you is to get training. YouTube, etc. Yes, you can learn a lot from it, but you'll advance so much faster if you work together with someone, either on like an online course, on one-on-one, or some other form of training, because you're gonna know much quicker what you're doing, and you're gonna be able to also take things from that and make them your own. And because there's so much conflicting opinions on YouTube and somehow everyone's an expert, probably including me, it's very easy to go down rabbit holes of stuff that are kind of useless. Like, the phase where everyone thought it was the smart thing to do to low cut every signal except the kick and bass, where I'm sure everyone now knows it's not a great idea. So take things with a pinch of salt, find people whose classes in music you think are good, and invest a bit of time and money into getting training from them, maybe for a month, 2, 3, and you'll make a huge jump and your whole process will become much more enjoyable. Now, the third thing that I would recommend, and this is actually now hardware based or things that you would need to buy, I think that I would recommend you to buy if you're not sure what the next step is. The very first thing I would recommend you is to get Slate VSX if you can swing it with the Platinum Edition. If not, get the Howie Weinberg Mastering Room and the Mike Dean expansion, and then you're set. With that, you can mix any kind of music anywhere super efficiently, and I guarantee you your mixes will translate. And the reason I'm sharing this is because I've been so impressed with the system. I use it as my final check myself. I'm not affiliated with Slate. I don't have any kind of business relationship with them at the moment, but I think it's one of the most incredible mixing tools that has come out in the last 15 years. So 100% support for this. If you're struggling to get your mixes right, if you hear things different in your room than when you hear them on another system, this is the solution. The other thing I would recommend you is to get controllers, to start to get your head around mapping controllers using something like the APC40 Mark II, maybe combined with a MIDI mix or a loop launcher or an Ableton Push. There are many different options. I personally use the APC40 Mark II, the MIDI mix, and a Novation Launchpad Mini. And being able to interface with your project and your music in real time using controllers, it's a complete game changer for how much more fun making music becomes. You go from entering stuff into something that looks almost like an Excel with your mouse to actually just jamming on a loop with faders and controllers and starting clips and everything, all very much in a state of flow. So don't let the controller workflow for your DAW be something that you kind of skip on. It's a huge thing and will make a huge difference for how you're able to be creative in the studio and how that process will feel. So I hope these were some good beginner tips. If you're already an intermediate producer, let's move now to the next step, what I would recommend you. I think the main thing I would say to keep in your mind is to not lose the fun factor, I'm going to call it, of making music, which is that once you get to a certain proficiency in anything, the seduction, the temptation can be there to just get really like into how do I get to the next step and what can I do to improve, and in that a certain stiffness and a certain non-spontaneity can come into your music and eventually lead to people burning out on it and just giving up music, etc. I've heard all kinds of stories there because it becomes a chore and not a joy. So stay flexible, stay open, stay explorative, just do wild stuff and enjoy your music, and never lose that connection to what you love about making music. The second thing I would say is to get out there, whether that is playing your music as part of DJ sets or actually proper live sets, releasing your music on Beatport, streaming platforms, whatever it is that you want to go for, playing live sets on YouTube, which is something I often do, because you're going to learn way more from listening to your track in a playlist on some streaming service or what it sounds like on YouTube between two other videos than spending months and even years tinkering away on stuff in sort of the seclusion of your own studio. And the process of then learning takes much longer than when your music's out there, and then you really know what does it sound like on that sound system, on that person's car, on this place where I'm playing today, this club system. It's the fastest way to have empirical foundations of what you should still be improving or looking at with your sound and your production and your songwriting. The third thing I would recommend is to invest in two things again. First thing would be room treatment. I would show you more of the studio now, but it's a nightmare in here. It's like a bomb went off. I'm still in the process of building up the third Rapid Flow studio, but one thing I did when I moved into this double garage is invest into having two very large bass absorbers built, and the difference it has made for this room is staggering. From being an echo chamber to now actually sounding like a studio with just two bass absorbers, and you can get this built by a carpenter for less than you would imagine. I'll do a video on how these things are because I think it'll be super useful for you to see. The other thing that I would recommend you to also invest in at this point is one deep, vibey, amazing synthesizer. You may already have some things floating around from your beginner times. Like usually we all start out kind of with more budget synths, but go to a music shop or listen to a ton of YouTube videos, no talking type videos, and look for the sound of a synth that when you hear it, you get goosebumps and you're like, wow, man, that's amazing. It can even be a monophonic synth. Like you can sample it and turn it into polyphonic. Of course, polyphonic is, gives you a lot more options. For me, a synth like that I would recommend is, for example, the Sequential Prophet 600, which is incredibly underrated, even though price-wise it's gone up. It's incredibly underrated. It sounds so beautiful. It's so easy to use, beautiful instrument. Another one would be the Sequential Prophet 6, something like the Waldorf Iridium, whether keyboard or desktop. I love everything MFB has ever made that I've heard. I think their synths are amazing. So what I'm saying is try to find an instrument that you can connect with and really love going deep in also, and know it, eventually you'll know it inside out, and using that to be able to really quickly manifest whatever it is, the sound that you had in your mind, in a way that it's like fast and you can just immediately record it and go to the next thing. And something like a sequential Prophet 6 can do everything. It can do fat bass, pads, lead, stabby sounds, noise sounds, modulation sounds. It's a really, really great machine, I think, to get started with. It's the one synth that sits on my desktop, has a desktop form factor, sits right in front of me so that I always have access to it. Another synth I could highly recommend is the Matrix 1000 by Oberheim, but you need a controller for it in order to use it properly. And it has a bit more quirks than something like the sequential Prophet 6, sorry. So having something like that in your studio will make making music much more fluent and enjoyable, and the tones you will get will be really great from the get-go. And I know there's people making amazing stuff using just software as synthesizers, but in my ears there's still a marked difference between how good analog synths, even DCO-based synths, sound compared to any plugin that I've heard. There are some which are cool, but once you hear the sound of like really well-designed high-end synths compared to whatever comes out of the box, sorry, but there's a huge gap still there, which is why I think it's worth investing in owning at least one deep synth that you can do stuff with. So moving along now, if you're an advanced producer, if you are already at a level where maybe you have a couple of releases out there where you're consistently getting good mixes and maybe even doing your own mastering, or your mastering engineer doesn't send you a ton of mix revisions, how do you go to the next step? The first thing I would recommend to you is to collaborate with other musicians, because in that process you will learn a lot, especially if you're able to do it in one room or maybe on a Zoom call. But just from their feedback, from their way of looking at things, whenever I've worked together with someone, I've always learned something new. The other thing is to remix tracks that you think are cool, or ask people if you can remix, and also to remake tracks, to learn from the process of maybe doing a track you love in your own way, and then have that, which will teach you so much about how that artist actually goes about making the music. So this is a very simple thing that I think you can do in just investing your time, and it will definitely take your production level up. The other thing would be, I think, to invest in master classes, again, training. So to work either one-on-one or in, usually they have kind of like closed communities where you could spend a couple of weeks or a couple of months with an artist of your choice, someone you really like, and learn from them. Highly recommend it. Again, it's going to give you a way bigger boost in your production than any plugin or any other outboard gear, hardware gear that you could find. So I would always invest in training at this level and learn from the best, learn from the people whose music you love. And then the final thing that I would say is to not underestimate the quality jump that high-end converters can give you. I underestimated it to a certain degree. I always thought, good enough is good enough. And definitely everything sort of from the benchmark references like RME and Apollo and stuff, from there on in, you're pretty safe. It's like, everything's good. But once you get to the level of things like Burl, or in my case, what I love, Prism Orpheus, the way when you track a sound, how it sounds in the mix and how easy it is to get it vibey and just alive is astonishing. And I noticed it recently when I was doing some streams here in the studio, and I was just using my sort of low end by now, probably PreSonus Quantum Converter, which sounds fine. But listening to my recordings, I was like, why is it missing the it factor, the mojo? And then I realized because I wasn't tracking through the prisms. Now the prisms these days, the Firewire Orpheuses can be had for like $600 to $800. You pipe them into a modern converter via ADAT, send them word clock, and you have super high-end conversion on a budget. I can highly recommend this production hack. The other piece of hardware that I would recommend you to invest in is a small or big API 500 type module rack, and start building up your outboard gear with API 500 style modules. I personally would recommend the Louder Than Lift of Chop Shop, the SPL Big, which is incredible. I would recommend you the Wes Audio Prometheus, which is like a Pultec without tubes. And then some other form of compressor, I have two 1176 clones here from Purple Audio, which is very cool. And then I have one SSL EQ. So basically with this setup, You're able to track any sound in perfectly, and it's actually not that expensive compared to buying a bunch of 19-inch rack units. And if you ever get bored of a device, it's so easy to pull it out of the rack, sell it, and buy something new. So getting into the API 500 module format is something I can highly recommend if you haven't done it already. So that's it. That is my tips, what I can give you for beginner, intermediate, and advanced producers. These are the things that gave me the biggest jumps in my quality level as I've been progressing on this journey. Again, thank you so much for subscribing to the channel, for supporting RapidFlow. We're really, really happy with the feedback you've been sending us, and we hope we will see you soon on a new video. Look out for the launch of ZenSphere, which is coming up in the next few days, as well as our new website and also our educational program, which is going to launch this winter. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next video. Take it easy. Bye-bye.